The stone corridor had never felt so cold. Sorsha pressed her back against the pillar, her breath trapped in her lungs as voices drifted through the half-open door of the king's private council chamber. She had come to find Rydian, to tell him the news that had been burning inside her for 3 days. News that would change everything. Instead, she had found something else entirely. The woman is a liability. The voice belonged to Lord Carveth, the king's senior advisor, a man whose silver tongue had guided 3 generations of Valanthor's rulers. Every day she remains in this castle, the risk grows. The northern houses are already whispering about your attachment. Sorsha's heart slammed against her ribs. They were speaking of her. They had to be. I am aware of the whispers. And there it was. Rydian's voice, deep and resonant, the same voice that had murmured her name like a prayer in moonlit gardens, the same voice that had sworn eternal devotion against her skin. Now it was flat, distant, wrong. Then you understand what must be done? Carveth's tone carried the weight of finality. She must be removed from the equation, permanently. Sorsha's hand flew to her mouth to stifle the gasp that threatened to escape. She is nothing. The words struck her like a physical blow. Her knees buckled, her vision blurred. Because that voice, those words, they had come from Rydian. A temporary diversion, he continued, each syllable carving deeper into her chest. A foolish indulgence I allowed myself before the weight of the crown demanded otherwise. She has no place in my future. She never did. The mark on her hip, the claiming bite he had given her beneath the autumn moon, flared with sudden, searing pain. Sorsha doubled over, one hand pressed to the spot where his teeth had once pierced her flesh in the most intimate bond a wolf could offer. He had marked her. He had sworn she was his fated mate. He had held her face in his hands and promised that no force in any realm could sever what existed between them. Lies. All of it. And the claiming mark? Carveth asked. A pause. Then Rydian's voice again, cold as winter steel. A mistake that will be corrected. The bond was never completed. It can still be severed. Sorsha did not wait to hear more. She moved through the servants' passages on instinct alone, her body carrying her forward while her mind fractured into 1,000 jagged pieces. 6 months. 6 months of stolen moments and whispered promises. 6 months of believing she had found something rare and precious in the arms of the most powerful wolf in 3 kingdoms. She had given him everything, her trust, her body, her heart. And now, growing beneath that heart, something more precious still. Sorsha's hand moved to her belly as she stumbled into her small chamber. Barely visible yet, the slight curve that held his child. Their child. Conceived in love, she had believed. Conceived in a bond she had thought unbreakable. She had planned to tell him tonight, had imagined the joy in his golden eyes when he learned he would be a father. Had pictured him lifting her into his arms, spinning her around, pressing kisses to her face while he declared their child the greatest gift the gods had ever granted. Instead, she had learned the truth. She was nothing to him. A mistake to be corrected. Sorsha moved through her chamber with trembling hands, gathering what little she owned. 2 dresses, her mother's ring, a pouch of coins she had saved, the herbs she had begun collecting for the nausea that plagued her mornings. She could not stay here. If Rydian planned to sever their bond, she could not be present for that ritual. The pain of hearing his words had been devastating enough. Feeling the mark physically torn from her flesh while he watched with those empty eyes would destroy her completely. And the child. What would happen to the child if Rydian decided it, too, was a mistake to be corrected? No, she would not allow anyone to harm the life growing inside her. Not Carveth with his cold calculations. Not the northern houses with their political machinations. Not even the king who had fathered it. Sorsha paused at her window, looking out at the castle she had called home for nearly a year. The spires of Valanthor reached toward a sky heavy with storm clouds. Below, courtiers strolled through manicured gardens, oblivious to the woman whose world had just collapsed. She could not go to the villages within Valanthor's borders. Rydian's wolves would find her within days. She could not seek refuge with any of the allied territories. Word would reach the king before she had time to disappear. There was only one place she could go where Valanthor's reach could not follow. Morveth. The enemy kingdom to the east, separated from Valanthor by the Ashwood Mountains and 200 years of bitter conflict. No wolf of Rydian's pack would dare cross that border without risking war. It was madness. Morveth's people were not wolves, but something older, something feared. The Shadowkin, they were called, beings who had learned to walk between worlds. They despised wolves. They killed them on sight. But Sorsha was not just a wolf. She was also a daughter of the old blood, her mother's line tracing back to the time before the packs, before the kingdoms, before wolves and Shadowkin had become enemies. She carried gifts that did not belong to either world. Perhaps, in the land of her enemy, she could finally be no one at all. Sorsha pulled her cloak tight around her shoulders and slipped through the servants' gate as the first drops of rain began to fall. She did not look back. She did not see the figure that emerged from the council chamber moments later, golden eyes wild with confusion and dawning horror. She did not see Rydian stagger against the corridor wall, one hand clutching his chest as if something inside him had been violently torn loose. She did not hear him speak her name in a voice that cracked with anguish. Sorsha. What have I done? What have I said? She did not see Lord Carveth watching from the shadows, a small smile playing at the corners of his thin lips, his fingers still stained with the residue of the compulsion powder he had slipped into the king's wine. And she did not see Rydian collapse to his knees as the foreign magic cleared from his mind, did not hear his howl of agony shake the ancient stones, did not witness him tear apart his own council chamber, searching for any trace of where she might have gone. By the time the king's wolves were dispatched to find her, Sorsha had already vanished into the rain. By the time Rydian reached her empty chamber, her scent already fading from the linens she had left behind, she was climbing the eastern mountain pass. And by the time dawn broke over Valanthor, Sorsha had crossed the border into Morveth, leaving behind everything she had ever known for a future as uncertain as the shadows that awaited her. The only certainty she carried was the life growing in her womb, and the vow that she would protect that child, even if it cost her everything else she had left to give. 3 months had passed since the night Sorsha fled across the mountains. The border village of Dunhallow had swallowed her whole, asking no questions, offering no kindness beyond what coin could purchase. It was a place of perpetual twilight, nestled in a valley where the sun struggled to penetrate the thick canopy of ancient pines. A place where wolves did not venture, and where a pregnant woman with haunted eyes was simply another lost soul seeking refuge from a past she refused to name. Sorsha had become Wren here, a traveling herbalist. A widow, she claimed, though the lie tasted bitter on her tongue each time she spoke it. She had found work with a local healer named Asha, an elderly woman whose silver eyes marked her as Shadowkin, but whose hands were gentle when they pressed against Sorsha's swelling belly. "The child is strong," Asha said during one of their evening examinations. "Perhaps too strong. I sense something unusual in its spirit." Sorsha tensed. "Unusual how?" Asha's fingers lingered on the curve of her stomach. "There is more than one heartbeat, child. Did you not know?" The words struck Sorsha like thunder. Twins. She was carrying twins, Rydian's twins. The mark on her hip, which should have faded months ago, flared with sudden heat. Sorsha gasped, pressing her palm to the spot as pain radiated through her body. This happened often now, always without warning, always accompanied by a strange sensation that felt almost like reaching, like someone was searching for her through the bond that should have been severed. You carry a claiming mark. Asha's voice was careful, devoid of judgment. Wolf maid? Sorsha's blood turned to ice. How do you know? I am old, child. I have seen many things that cross the boundaries between our peoples. A wolf mark leaves traces that do not vanish simply because you cross a border. Asha's silver eyes met hers. Does the father know you carry his heirs? The father believes I am nothing. The words came out harder than Sorsha intended. A mistake to be corrected. His words, not mine. Asha studied her for a long moment. And yet the mark persists. Strange, is it not? A wolf who rejects his mate should feel the bond dissolve. The mark should fade within weeks. She traced a finger along her own wrist, where faded scars spoke of old wounds. I have seen rejected mates before. Their marks do not burn with reaching. Sorsha shook her head. It means nothing. Whatever he felt, whatever I believed we shared, it was a deception. I heard him speak the truth with my own ears. Truth can be manufactured, child. Words can be weapons wielded by hands other than the speaker's. Before Sorsha could respond, the door to Asha's cottage burst open. A young boy, no more than 12, stumbled across the threshold, his thin chest heaving with exertion. His eyes found Asha immediately. Mistress, you must hear. Travelers from the Western Pass. They bring news. Asha rose slowly. What news could be so urgent? The boy's voice dropped to barely a whisper. Wolves have crossed the border. An entire pack. They entered Morveth lands 3 days ago and have been moving east ever since. Sorsha's heart stopped. The Shadow Council is furious, the boy continued. They speak of war if the wolves do not withdraw. But the wolves refuse. They claim they are searching for something. Someone. Who? Asha asked. The boy shook his head. No one knows. But the Wolf King leads them himself. They say he has gone mad. They say he has not slept in months. They say he will tear apart both kingdoms if he does not find what he seeks. The mark on Sorsha's hip erupted with fire. She cried out, doubling over as pain blazed through her body. This was worse than any burning she had experienced before. This was proximity. This was his presence drawing closer, his wolf reaching through the bond with desperate, clawing need. How was this possible? He had rejected her. He had called her nothing. The bond should be dead. Unless it had never been severed at all. Unless everything she had heard that night was not what it seemed. Sorsha gripped the edge of the table, fighting to stay upright as the twins kicked violently within her. They could feel it too. Their father's presence. Their father's searching. Child? Asha's hand closed around her arm. The woman he seeks. It is you, is it not? Sorsha could not deny it. The truth was written in the fire consuming her hip, in the chaos erupting around them, in the children, who even now responded to the call of their father's blood. Yes, she whispered. It is me. Asha's expression shifted to something unreadable. Then you must leave Dunhallow before sunrise. If the Shadow Council learns you are here, they will use you as leverage against the Wolf King. You will become a weapon in a war you never asked to join. Where can I go? He is crossing the mountains. His wolves are everywhere. And the Shadowkin will kill me if they discover what I am. Asha pressed something into her palm. A small pendant carved from bone so old it had turned black. There is a sanctuary deep in the thornwood. My sister keeps it. Show her this, and she will give you shelter. Asha's silver eyes gleamed. But you must go now, child. Before his wolves catch your scent. Before the Shadow Council catches wind of your existence. Sorsha looked down at the pendant, then back at the old woman who had shown her the only kindness she had known in 3 months. Why are you helping me? Your people hate wolves? Asha smiled, and for a moment, her ancient face softened. I do not see a wolf when I look at you, child. I see a mother protecting her young. There is no creature in any realm more dangerous or more worthy of aid. A howl split the night outside. Close. Far too close. Sorsha ran. The news spread through Morveth like wildfire. The Wolf King had entered enemy territory with 500 of his strongest warriors, and he showed no signs of stopping. Villages that had stood for centuries trembled as his pack moved through them, questioning every soul, searching every home. They were hunting for someone. A woman, the whispers said. A woman who had vanished from Valanthor on a stormy night 3 months past. The Wolf King offered no explanations, no apologies for violating the ancient borders. He simply pressed forward with the single-minded determination of a predator tracking wounded prey. And behind him, both kingdoms teetered on the edge of war. Sorsha learned all of this from the traders who passed through the Thornwood, their wagons laden with goods and gossip from distant territories. She had found Asha's sister, a woman named Yara, whose silver eyes held the same knowing depth, and had been granted sanctuary in a cottage hidden so deep within the ancient forest that even the Shadow Council's scouts had never found it. But sanctuary could not silence the voices. They say the Wolf King has gone feral, a merchant told Yara one evening, unaware that Sorsha listened from behind a curtain of dried herbs. His own advisors fear him. He tore apart one of his lords with his bare hands when the man suggested the search be abandoned. What could drive an alpha to such madness? Yara asked. His mate. The merchant's voice dropped. Some say he lost his true mate, that she fled or was taken, and the separation has driven his wolf beyond reason. They say the bond between them was never completed, and the incompleteness is slowly killing him. Sorsha's hands moved to her belly, where the twins shifted restlessly. The bond was never completed. That much was true. Ridian had marked her, had claimed her body, and had sworn his eternal devotion. But the final ritual, the one that would fuse their souls permanently, had not yet occurred. They had planned to complete it after his coronation ceremonies concluded, after the political pressures eased, after she told him about the pregnancy. Now 3 months had passed, and the incomplete bond was destroying him. But why? If she was nothing to him, if she was merely a mistake to be corrected, why would her absence drive him to madness? Rejected bonds faded naturally. The pain of separation should have dulled within weeks, leaving only a faint scar where the mark had been. Unless the rejection had never truly happened. Unless what she had heard that night was not what she believed. The thought tormented her. She turned it over in her mind during sleepless nights, examined it from every angle, and found herself no closer to understanding. Lord Carveth's voice echoed in her memory. She must be removed from the equation, permanently. And Ridian's response. She is nothing. A mistake that will be corrected. She had heard those words clearly. They had not been whispered or muffled. They had been spoken plainly, directly in the voice she knew as intimately as her own heartbeat. But Asha's words haunted her too. Truth can be manufactured. Words can be weapons wielded by hands other than the speakers. What if she had been meant to hear those words? What if someone had orchestrated the entire scene, knowing she would be in that corridor, knowing she would flee, knowing that her disappearance would accomplish what Carveth had truly wanted all along? The removal of the Wolf King's true mate, not through death, through deception. Sorsha rose from her pallet, too restless to sleep. The cottage was quiet, Yara having gone to gather moonwort from a clearing several miles distant. Through the small window, Sorsha could see the stars scattered across a cloudless sky. The mark on her hip pulsed with warmth. Not the searing pain of recent days, but something softer, almost tender, as if Ridian was dreaming of her somewhere out there in the darkness. She pressed her hand to the spot, and for one moment, she allowed herself to feel the connection that still tethered them together. The bond was weak, incomplete, strained by distance and doubt, but it was not dead. Perhaps It never had been. A branch snapped outside the cottage. Sorsha froze. Another snap. Closer now. And beneath it, the barely audible sound of breathing that did not belong to any forest creature. She reached for the knife Yara had given her movements silent as she edged toward the window. The trees beyond the cottage were dark shapes against the moonlit sky, motionless in the windless night. But something moved among them. A figure emerged from the tree line. Then another. And another. Not wolves. Their movements were too fluid, their bodies too angular, their eyes catching the moonlight with a silver gleam that marked them as shadow kin. 3 of them. Warriors, by the blades strapped to their backs. And they were staring directly at the cottage, directly at her. "We know you are within, wolf woman." The voice belonged to the tallest of the 3, a male whose silver eyes blazed with barely contained hostility. "You were seen crossing into Dunhallow 3 months past. Your trail has been difficult to follow, but not impossible." Sorsha's blood turned to ice. "The Shadow Council has questions for you," the warrior continued. "Questions about the Wolf King who even now burns a path of destruction through our lands. Questions about why he would risk war for one insignificant female." Sorsha's grip tightened on her knife. She was heavily pregnant, exhausted, and outnumbered 3-1. Fighting was not an option, but neither was surrender. "You will come with us willingly," the warrior said. "Or you will come with us broken. The choice is yours." A howl shattered the silence. The shadow warriors spun toward the sound, blades drawn with supernatural speed. But the howl had not come from the west, where Rydian's pack was hunting. It had come from directly behind them. And in the heartbeat before chaos erupted, Sorsha saw golden eyes blazing from the darkness of the thornwood. Eyes she would have recognized anywhere. Eyes that had haunted her dreams for 3 endless months. He had found her. The wolf that exploded from the thornwood was unlike anything Sorsha had ever seen. Massive, monstrous, a creature of pure midnight fur and blazing golden fury that moved like death itself given form. It struck the nearest shadow warrior before the male could raise his blade, jaws closing around his throat with a wet, terrible crunch. The other 2 warriors scattered, their supernatural speed the only thing that saved them from the same fate. They circled the beast with blades drawn, silver runes glowing along the steel, and Sorsha could only stare. She knew that wolf, knew it in the marrow of her bones, in the mark that blazed on her hip, in the children who kicked frantically within her womb. She had seen him shift only twice before, in private moments when he trusted her with his most primal self. Rydian. He had found her. The Wolf King fought with a savagery that bordered on feral. No strategy, no restraint. Only the pure, primal need to destroy anything that threatened what belonged to him. He caught one shadow warrior by the arm, shaking until the limb separated from the body in a spray of silver blood. The 3rd warrior fled into the trees, his terrified shouts echoing through the ancient forest. Then those golden eyes turned to her. Sorsha's breath caught as the massive wolf approached, each step deliberate, each movement radiating barely contained power. Blood dripped from his muzzle. His chest heaved with exertion. And his eyes, those eyes she had loved beyond reason, held something she had never seen before. Desperation. Raw, devastating desperation. The wolf stopped mere inches from her swollen belly. His great head lowered, and she felt the warmth of his breath through the thin fabric of her dress. A sound emerged from his throat, something between a whine and a growl, as the children within her responded to their father's presence with a flurry of movement. "Rydian!" His name tore from her lips before she could stop it. The wolf shuddered. Light rippled across his form as the shift began. But before he could complete the transformation, before the man could emerge to speak the words burning in his golden eyes, a horn split the night. Then another. Then a dozen more. Sorsha spun toward the sound. Through the trees, torches flickered to life. Hundreds of them. Thousands. An entire army of shadow kin materializing from the darkness like phantoms given form. They had been waiting. The three warriors had been a scouting party. A test. And now, the full force of Morveth's military might descended upon the Thornwood like a tide of silver and steel. A hand closed around Sorsha's arm. She spun, knife raised, and found herself staring into amber eyes that were not Rydian's, but carried the same fierce loyalty. The man was older, his dark hair shot through with gray, his face weathered by decades of battle. "My lady, we must move, now." "Who are you?" "Corvin. First beta to the king." He was already pulling her toward the trees. "There is no time. The Shadowkin have been tracking you for weeks. They knew we would come for you. This is a trap." Behind them, Rydian's wolf form launched at the advancing army. Alone against hundreds, he fought with the madness of an alpha protecting his mate. But even his strength could not hold back an ocean. "He will die," Sorsha gasped. "We cannot leave him." "The king cannot die while you live. The bond sustains him." Corvin's grip tightened on her arm. "But you can die. And if you fall, he falls with you. Every wolf in Valanthor falls with you." They plunged into the undergrowth as the sounds of battle erupted behind them. Corvin moved with preternatural speed, half carrying Sorsha when her pregnant body could not keep pace. Branches clawed at her face. Roots caught at her feet. And through it all, the mark on her hip burned with Rydian's fury and fear. "You must listen to me," Corvin said as they ran. "What you heard that night, the words you believe the king spoke, they were not his truth." "I heard him clearly." "You heard poison." Corvin ducked beneath a fallen log, pulling her after him. "Lord Carveth has been working against the crown for years. He slipped compulsion powder into the king's wine before that meeting. The words Rydian spoke were not his own. They were planted, forced from his lips by magic older and darker than anything we had prepared for." Sorsha's mind reeled. "That is impossible." "It should have been. But Carveth had allies we did not suspect. The northern houses have been planning this for a decade, my lady. They needed Rydian to reject his true mate. They needed you gone so they could install their own candidate in your place." "What candidate?" "Lady Melisande of House Varin." Corvin's voice hardened with disgust. "She has been circling Rydian since before you arrived at court. When you vanished, they believed their path was clear. But the king refused to accept another. He has spent every moment since that night hunting for you, searching, destroying anyone who stood in his way." They burst into a small clearing, and Corvin finally stopped, his chest heaving. In the distance, the sounds of battle continued. Howls and screams and the clash of metal against claw. When the compulsion cleared from his mind, he did not remember speaking those words. He only knew that you were gone and that something terrible had happened. Corvin's eyes met hers. "He has not slept more than an hour at a time since you disappeared. His wolf is consuming him, my lady. The incomplete bond is tearing him apart from the inside." Sorsha pressed her hand to her belly, where the twins had finally stilled. He truly did not mean what he said? He meant none of it. You are his fated mate. The only woman he has ever loved. The only woman he will ever love. Corvin's voice cracked. "I have served Rydian since he was a boy. I have never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. Losing you has broken something in him that I fear can never be healed." The words crashed over Sorsha like waves against stone. 3 months of grief. 3 months of believing herself worthless, discarded, forgotten. 3 months of carrying his children while convinced their father had never truly wanted her. All of it based on lies. Tears burned in her eyes. "I need to see him. I need to tell him about the children. I need—" An arrow punched through Corvin's shoulder. The beta staggered, shock flashing across his face before he spun to face the threat. But more arrows were already flying, silver-tipped death raining from the trees. Shadowkin archers. Dozens of them. Corvin threw himself in front of Sorsha, his body a shield as more projectiles found their mark. One in his thigh, one in his side, a third grazing his temple. "Run," he commanded. "Find the king. Tell him—" A blow struck the back of his head, and the beta crumpled. Sorsha screamed, dropping to her knees beside him. But hands were already closing around her arms, hauling her upright. Silver-eyed faces surrounded her, their expressions cold and triumphant. "The Wolf King's mate," one of them said with satisfaction. "The Shadow Council will be pleased. Take her. Kill the other." "No!" Sorsha struggled against her captors. "Leave him. He has done nothing. He is a wolf in our territory. That is crime enough." A blade rose over Corvan's unconscious form, and Sorsha felt something ancient and terrible awaken in her blood. "I said no." The power erupted from her without warning. Not the gentle warmth she had always suppressed. Not the healing light her mother's bloodline had carried for generations. This was something else entirely. Something darker. Something that belonged to no wolf and no shadow kin, but to something far older than either. Shadow itself. It exploded outward from her body in a wave of pure darkness, throwing her captors back like leaves in a storm. The archers dropped from the trees unconscious before they hit the ground. The warriors who had held her slammed against ancient oaks and did not rise. For one breathless moment, Sorsha stood alone in a clearing of fallen enemies, shadows dancing around her like living things. Then the power receded, and exhaustion crashed over her like a physical weight. She collapsed beside Corvin, one hand pressed to her belly, the other reaching for the fallen beta's wrist. Alive. Barely. His pulse thready but present. "What?" she whispered. "What am I?" But there was no one conscious to answer. And when the second wave of shadow kin arrived minutes later, finding their comrades sprawled across the clearing and a pregnant woman unconscious in their midst, they handled her with far more caution than before. Whatever she was no ordinary wolf. And the Shadow Council would want to know exactly what power they had captured. Sorsha woke in chains. The room was carved from black stone, its walls smooth and cold, its only light coming from crystals embedded in the ceiling that cast an eerie blue glow over everything. Her wrists were bound in silver, the metal burning against her skin with a constant, low agony that made it impossible to concentrate. She was no longer in the thornwood. Memory returned in fragments. The battle. Corvin's revelation. The power that had exploded from her body. And then darkness, followed by the rough hands of captors who spoke of her in whispers, their silver eyes wide with something that might have been fear. The children. Sorsha's hands flew to her belly, chains rattling with the movement. Still there. Still whole. Still shifting with the restless movements of two lives that refused to be stilled. She exhaled a shaky breath. "They are unharmed." The voice came from the shadows beyond the circle of blue light. Sorsha tensed as a figure emerged, a woman whose silver eyes gleamed with ancient intelligence. Her hair was white as bone, her face ageless, her body draped in robes of midnight silk. "I am Thessaly," the woman said, "High Seer of the Shadow Council, and you, child, are something we have not seen in a very long time." Sorsha forced her voice to remain steady. "I am a prisoner, nothing more." "You are far more than that." Thessaly circled her slowly, studying her the way a scholar might examine a rare artifact. "We knew you carried the Wolf King's heir. That alone made you valuable. But what happened in the Thornwood? The power you unleashed?" She paused before Sorsha, her silver eyes boring into her. "That was not wolf magic. That was Shadowborn." "I do not know what that means." "It means your bloodline carries secrets that even you were not told." Thessaly crouched before her, bringing their faces level. The old blood. The lineage that existed before wolves and shadow kin divided into separate peoples. It was believed to be extinct. My mother was a healer. Nothing more. Your mother was the last daughter of a line that has been hunted to the edge of oblivion. The old blood carries the power of both worlds, child. Wolf and shadow combined. Thessaly's lips curved into something that was almost a smile. And you have passed that blood to the creatures growing in your womb. Sorsha's arms wrapped protectively around her belly. What do you want from me? What we want is irrelevant. What matters is what the Shadow King wants. Thessaly rose. He has been informed of your capture. He is interested. The Shadow King? Valdris, ruler of Morveth. He has reigned for 300 years and grown bored with most things. But you, Thessaly's eyes glittered. You have captured his attention, a wolf woman carrying royal airs, possessed of power that has not been seen since the ancient wars, and connected by incomplete bond to an alpha king who has already invaded our territory to find her. The door to the chamber opened, and 2 guards entered. He will see you now, Thessaly announced. I suggest you speak carefully. Valdris is not known for his patience. The guards hauled Sorsha to her feet, ignoring her gasp of pain as the silver chains pulled against her raw wrists. They marched her through corridors of black stone, past Shadowkin who stopped to stare at the pregnant wolf woman being led to their king. The throne room of Morveth was nothing like the bright halls of Valanthor. Here, darkness reigned. The ceiling stretched so high it vanished into shadow. Columns of obsidian rose like the ribs of some massive beast, and at the far end, upon a throne carved from a single piece of midnight crystal, sat the Shadow King. Valdris was beautiful in the way that dangerous things were beautiful. His features were sharp and perfect, his silver eyes ancient beyond measure, his body lean and powerful beneath robes that seemed to drink the light. He watched Sorsha's approach with the stillness of a predator waiting for prey to come within striking distance. So this is the woman who has driven the Wolf King to madness. His voice echoed through the chamber, rich and cold. I confess, I expected something more impressive. Sorsha lifted her chin despite her chains. And I expected the Shadow King to have better manners than to chain a pregnant woman. Valdris's eyebrows rose. A murmur rippled through the assembled court. She has fire, Valdris observed. Perhaps I understand the wolf's obsession after all. I am no one's obsession, and I am certainly not a bargaining chip in whatever political game you are playing. No? Valdris leaned forward on his throne. Then explain to me why 500 wolves have crossed into my territory for the first time in 2 centuries. Explain why the Alpha King of Valanthor has threatened to burn my kingdom to ashes if I do not return what belongs to him. His eyes dropped to her belly. Explain why you carry royal heirs who possess the old blood. Sorsha remained silent. You are exactly a bargaining chip, Valdris continued. The most valuable one to exist in 300 years. With you in my possession, Rydian will give me anything I demand, territory, resources, perhaps even his crown. He will give you nothing. Whatever existed between us is over. Valdris laughed, the sound echoing off the obsidian walls. Is it? Then why does my seer tell me that your claiming mark still burns? Why do my scouts report that the Wolf King fights like a beast possessed? Why did he abandon his entire kingdom to chase a woman across enemy borders if she means nothing to him? Sorsha had no answer. He comes for you even now, Valdris said softly. Alone. Without his army. Without his advisors. He has requested an audience with me, and he has offered something I never thought I would hear from a Wolf King's lips. What? Valdris smiled. Himself. In exchange for you? The words struck Sorsha like a physical blow. No. He arrives within the hour, and when he does, I will offer him a choice. Valdris settled back on his throne, his silver eyes gleaming with satisfaction. His kingdom, or his mate, his people, or his children. Everything he has built, everything he rules, surrendered for one woman who fled from him in the night. He will not agree to that. Then I will kill you in front of him and watch what remains of his sanity shatter. Valdris's voice held no anger, no malice, only cold, calculated certainty. Either way, I win. Either I gain a kingdom, or I destroy the Wolf King so completely that he will never threaten my borders again. Sorsha's chains rattled as she stepped forward. And if I am more valuable than you realize? The old blood you spoke of. The power I carry. Kill me, and you lose that forever. A fair point. Valdris considered her. Very well. I will not kill you. But your children? His gaze dropped to her belly. Heirs can be removed from their mother, raised in shadow, trained to serve Morveth instead of Valanthor. Horror flooded through Sorsha. You would not. I would do far worse to protect my people from wolf aggression. Valdris gestured to his guards. Take her to the viewing gallery. When her king arrives, she will watch him choose. And then she will understand that love, no matter how powerful, cannot stand against the weight of a crown. They dragged her away before she could respond, and in the darkness of her new prison, Sorsha pressed her hands to her belly and prayed that Rydian would not come, that he would choose his kingdom over her, that he would let her go. But even as she formed the thought, she felt the mark on her hip blaze with approaching heat. He was almost here, and nothing would stop him from reaching her. The throne room fell silent as the Wolf King of Valanthor entered. Rydian walked alone, without guard or escort. He wore no armor, carried no visible weapons. His dark hair was wild, his golden eyes blazing with barely contained fury, and his body moved with the coiled tension of a predator forced to restrain himself. He was beautiful. He was terrifying. He was everything Sorsha had tried to forget during 3 months of exile. From her position in the viewing gallery above the throne room, she watched him approach Valdris with steady steps. The Shadowkin courtiers shrank back from him, unable to meet those burning eyes. Even the guards who flanked the throne shifted uneasily. Only Valdris remained unmoved, a small smile playing at the corners of his lips. The Wolf King honors us with his presence, Valdris said. Though I confess, I expected more fanfare. An army, perhaps. Threats of war. Instead, you come alone. You have something that belongs to me. Rydian's voice was rough, as if he had not used it properly in months. Return her, and I will leave your territory without further bloodshed. Bloodshed you have already caused. My scouts report 47 of my warriors dead by your hand. Villages destroyed, supply lines disrupted. Valdris shook his head. You have invaded my kingdom, Wolf King. That demands more than a simple retreat. Name your price. Ah, straight to business. Valdris rose from his throne, descending the steps with fluid grace. Very well, I will name my price. He gestured toward the viewing gallery. Sorsha's heart stopped as every eye in the throne room turned to her. Guards yanked her to her feet, forcing her to the railing where Rydian could see her clearly. His reaction was immediate and devastating. A snarl tore from his throat, golden eyes flashing to pure wolf. His body trembled with the effort of restraining his shift. And through the bond, Sorsha felt the full force of his emotions crash into her. Rage, terror, love so profound it stole her breath. Sorsha. Her name was a broken prayer on his lips. What have they done to you? She opened her mouth to respond, but Valdris spoke first. She is unharmed. The chains are merely a precaution, given the rather impressive display of power she demonstrated in the Thornwood. The Shadow King circled Rydian slowly. Did you know your mate carried the old blood? Did you know the children in her womb possess abilities that have not existed in 3 centuries? Rydian's gaze never left Sorsha. I do not care what she carries. I only care that she returns to me. How romantic. Valdris stopped before him. Then let me present your choice, Wolf King. A simple trade, your kingdom for your mate. The words echoed through the silent throne room. Surrender Valanthor to me, Valdris continued. Renounce your crown. Command your wolves to stand down, and I will release the woman and her children unharmed. You may even live out your days together in peaceful exile somewhere far from here. And if I refuse? Valdris's smile sharpened. Then I will take her children from her womb the moment they are born and raise them as weapons against your people. I will keep her alive just long enough to watch everything she loves burn. And when I am finished, I will hang her body from the walls of your own castle as a reminder of what happens to wolves who dare cross my borders. Sorsha's blood turned to ice. Rydian, do not listen to him. Do not sacrifice your kingdom for me. Silence her, Valdris commanded. A guard's hand clamped over her mouth. But the damage was done. Rydian's eyes had locked with hers, and something passed between them through the bond. Not words, not thoughts. Something deeper. Something that transcended language entirely. Understanding, trust, and beneath it all, a love that 3 months of separation and pain could not diminish. You ask me to choose between my kingdom and my mate, Rydian said quietly. You believe this is an impossible decision, that I will either destroy myself to save her or destroy her to save my throne. That is precisely what I believe. Rydian laughed. The sound was broken and hollow, but it carried something Valdris had not expected. Certainty. Then you do not understand what a mate bond means to a wolf? He moved before anyone could react. His shift was instantaneous, his human form exploding into the massive black wolf that had haunted Sorsha's dreams. He was not aiming for Valdris. He was not attacking the guards. He was leaping toward the viewing gallery, toward her. Chaos erupted. Shadow kin guards surged forward, blades drawn. Valdris shouted commands. Arrows flew toward the ascending wolf, silver-tipped death seeking his heart. But Rydian had spent 3 months fighting to reach this moment. Nothing would stop him now. He landed on the gallery railing, his massive form blocking the arrows meant for Sorsha. He felt them pierce his body, one after another, silver fire burning through his flesh. But he did not fall. He did not retreat. He turned, placing himself between her and every threat in the room. Through their bond, Sorsha felt his pain, felt the poison of silver working through his veins, felt the desperate determination that kept him standing when his body screamed for collapse. I choose her. Rydian's voice rang out in her mind, the bond carrying his words directly to her soul. I will always choose her, even if it means my life, even if it means my kingdom. She is my mate, my heart, my home. Nothing Valdris can threaten will change that truth. Sorsha's chains rattled as she pressed herself against his blood-soaked fur. Then we face this together. Whatever comes next. Together. Rydian's wolf made a sound that was almost a purr, even as more arrows struck his body. Below, Valdris watched with narrowed eyes. Archers, stand down, the Shadow King commanded. The rain of arrows ceased. Rydian's legs trembled, his massive form beginning to sway. The silver was taking its toll. He would not remain standing much longer. You would truly die for her, Valdris said. It was not a question. You would watch your kingdom fall, watch your people enslaved, watch everything you have built crumble to dust, all for one woman. Yes. The word emerged from Rydian's muzzle as a growl. Valdris was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, impossibly, he began to smile. I have ruled for 300 years, the Shadow King said. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched countless kings sacrifice everything for power, for glory, for legacy. But I have never seen one throw it all away for love. He gestured to his guards. Release her chains. Sorsha stared. What? You heard me. Release her. Valdris's silver eyes found Rydian's golden ones. I wanted to know what manner of wolf had dared to invade my kingdom. Now I know. A wolf who has found something worth more than his crown. The guards removed Sorsha's chains with trembling hands. She immediately pressed herself against Rydian's side, her fingers sinking into his fur. You still owe me a debt, Valdris continued. 47 warriors, destroyed villages, 3 months of disruption to my territories. We will negotiate that debt at a later date. He paused. But the woman and her children are yours. Take them and leave my kingdom before I change my mind. Rydian's wolf form shuddered, then collapsed. Rydian! Sorsha dropped to her knees beside him, her hands pressing against the wounds that covered his body. Silver poisoning, multiple arrows, blood loss severe enough that even a wolf's healing would struggle. He needs a healer, she cried. Please, he is dying. Valdris watched impassively. That is not my concern. Then make it your concern. Sorsha's voice dropped to something cold and deadly. Because if he dies, I will show you exactly what the old blood can do when it has nothing left to lose. Shadows flickered around her hands, responding to her fury. Valdris's eyes widened slightly. Then, after a pause that stretched like eternity, he nodded. Thessaly, see to the Wolf King's wounds. It seems we have further negotiations ahead, and I would prefer my bargaining chip alive. The High Seer moved forward, her silver eyes unreadable. And as she began to work on Rydian's broken body, Sorsha held his massive head in her lap and whispered the truth she had kept inside for 3 months. I love you. I never stopped. And you are not allowed to die before I finish telling you everything you have missed. The wolf's golden eyes flickered open for just a moment. Then they closed again, and Sorsha could only pray she had not been too late. Rydian woke to the scent of her. For 3 months, he had dreamed of that scent, had chased it through nightmares and waking visions, had torn apart his own kingdom searching for even a trace of the woman who had vanished like smoke on a winter wind. Now she was here, real and warm, her hand clasped in his as he lay on a bed of shadow silk in a chamber of black stone. Sorsha. Her name emerged rough and broken from his throat. Her eyes, those beautiful gray eyes that had haunted his every waking moment, glistened with tears. You came back to me. I never left. He tried to rise, but his body screamed in protest. The silver wounds were healing, the poison slowly clearing from his blood, but he was far from whole. I searched everywhere, every village, every forest, every corner of 3 kingdoms. I know. Her fingers tightened around his. Corvin told me. Before they captured us, he told me everything. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. What he told you was true. Rydian forced himself upright despite the pain, needing to see her face clearly. The words you heard that night, I did not speak them willingly. Karvith used compulsion powder, ancient magic that forces words from unwilling lips. I did not know you were listening. I did not even remember speaking until the poison cleared 3 days later. Sorsha's jaw tightened. I heard you call me nothing, a mistake to be corrected. Lies. Poison. Rydian reached for her face, his palm cupping her cheek with desperate tenderness. You are everything. The only thing I have wanted since the moment I first saw you. When I woke and found you gone, when I realized what had been done. His voice cracked. I destroyed my own council chamber. I nearly killed Karveth before Corvin pulled me back. And then, I began to search. 3 months. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I believed for 3 months that you had thrown me away. And I spent those same 3 months believing I had lost the only woman I would ever love. Rydian pulled her toward him, pressing his forehead to hers. Forgive me. For not protecting you from Karveth's schemes. for not finding you sooner, for every moment of pain my failure caused you. Sorsha's hands came up to frame his face. There is nothing to forgive. You were a victim as much as I was. But you suffered alone, and you were not alone in truth. His eyes dropped to her swollen belly. Corvin told me about the child. Sorsha's breath caught. He knew? He suspected. The way you protected your stomach during the battle. The way the Shadowkin spoke of heirs. Rydian's hand moved to rest against the curve where his child grew. Sorsha, is it true? Do you carry my child? She placed her hand over his. Children, she whispered. Twins. A boy and a girl, if the healers are correct. The sound that emerged from Rydian was something between a laugh and a sob. His forehead dropped to her belly, his shoulders shaking as 3 months of grief and desperation finally found release. Twins, he breathed against her dress. My children. Our children. The babies kicked in response, movements coming from 2 distinct places. Rydian gasped, his hands spreading wider to feel every flutter. They know you. Sorsha's voice was soft. They have always known you. Even when I tried to convince myself you had abandoned us, they would kick whenever I thought of you, as if they were reminding me that their father still existed somewhere in the world. Rydian looked up at her, golden eyes blazing with emotion. I will never abandon you, never abandon them. Whatever happens next, whatever enemies we face them as one. He pulled her down to him, and their lips met in a kiss that ignited the bond between them. The sensation was overwhelming. Heat and light and desperate need flooding through the connection that had remained incomplete for far too long. Sorsha gasped against his mouth as she felt his emotions pour into her. Not just love, though that was there in abundance, but also the horror of those missing months, the desperation, the slow descent toward madness as his wolf fought for control. The moment of crushing relief when he had finally seen her in the gallery. And beneath it all, a devotion so absolute it left no room for doubt. She pulled back, breathing hard. The bond. Not complete. Not yet. Rydian's eyes were pure gold now, his wolf rising to the surface. But soon. When we are home. When you are safe. I will claim you properly, and you will claim me, and no force in any realm will ever separate us again. Before Sorsha could respond, the chamber door burst open. Corvin stood in the entrance, his body still bearing the marks of his wounds, but his expression alert with urgency. My king, we have received word from Valanthor. Rydian's arms tightened around Sorsha. What word? Karvith has made his move. In your absence, he has declared you unfit to rule. Lady Melisande has been installed as regent, with Karvith as her chief advisor. Corvin's jaw clenched. They are calling for your execution as a traitor who abandoned his kingdom for an enemy whore. Sorsha flinched at the word. Rydian's growl shook the room. How many stand with them? House Varen and their allies. Perhaps a third of the nobility. The common wolves remain loyal, but they are scattered and leaderless. Corvin stepped forward. My king, we must return. If Karvith consolidates power while you remain in Morveth, then everything I built will fall to those who sought to destroy it from within. Rydian rose from the bed, his body protesting every movement but his will overriding the pain. How long until we can reach the border? 6 hours if we ride hard. But my king? Corvin hesitated. Our scouts report movement in the mountain passes. Karvith has sent men to intercept us. Assassins. They know we must cross through the Ashwood to return. How many? At least 50. Possibly more. Sorsha rose beside Rydian, her hand finding his. Then we fight through them. Both men turned to her. I am not hiding again, she said firmly. I am not running. Whatever comes next, I face it beside my mate. Rydian's eyes softened with pride and concern. You carry our children. The risk The risk is greater if we are separated. You nearly died coming for me. I will not watch that happen again while I cower in safety. She lifted her chin. I have power now. Power I do not fully understand, but I will use every drop of it to protect our family. Corvin and Rydian exchanged glances. Something passed between them. The silent communication of men who had fought together for decades. Very well, Rydian finally said. We ride together. We fight together. He pulled Sorsha close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. But if I tell you to run, you run. Promise me that much. Sorsha's hand moved to her belly. I promise. They departed Morveth as dawn broke over the mountains. And somewhere in the passes ahead, 50 assassins sharpened their blades and waited for the Wolf King to come home. The ambush came at the narrowest point of the Ashwood Pass. One moment the path ahead was clear. The next, arrows were raining from the cliffsides, and dark shapes were pouring from the tree line with blades drawn. Rydian shifted instantly, his massive black wolf form exploding forward to meet the first wave of attackers. Corvin followed, his gray wolf smaller but no less deadly as he tore through assassins with brutal efficiency. But there were too many. Sorsha pressed herself against a boulder, one hand on her belly, the other clutching the knife Corvin had given her. The wolves around her fought with desperate courage, but the assassins had chosen their position well. The narrow pass limited mobility. The high cliffs provided cover for archers, and the sheer numbers meant that for every enemy that fell, 2 more took their place. An assassin broke through the defensive line, his blade aimed at Sorsha's heart. She moved on instinct, the knife in her hand finding his throat before she consciously decided to strike. The man crumpled, his eyes wide with surprise, and Sorsha stared at the blood on her hands. She had killed a man. There was no time to process the horror. Another assassin was already lunging toward her, and another behind him. The wolves were being pushed back. Rydian was bleeding from a dozen wounds, his black fur matted with crimson. Through the bond, she felt his fear. Not for himself, for her. For the children she carried. Surrender the woman, a voice called out, cutting through the chaos of battle. Surrender her, and we will let the rest of you live. Lord Carveth stepped from the shadows of the tree line. He looked nothing like the composed advisor who had manipulated a king with compulsion powder. His face was twisted with hatred, his eyes gleaming with fanatical purpose. You have caused me considerable trouble, Carveth said, his gaze fixed on Sorsha. 3 months of careful planning, undone because you refused to die quietly in exile. Rydian's wolf form surged toward him, but 3 assassins intercepted, their silver blades forcing him back. Your king cannot save you. Carveth drew closer. Your pet Beta cannot save you. No one is coming to rescue the common whore who thought she could wear a crown. Something ancient stirred in Sorsha's blood. I never wanted a crown, she said quietly. I only wanted him. Carveth laughed. How touching, and how pathetic. Did you truly believe a servant girl could hold the heart of a king? You were a passing fancy, a momentary distraction from the burden of rule. Rydian would have discarded you eventually, even without my intervention. You are wrong. Am I? Carveth raised his blade. Then why did he speak those words so easily? Why did the compulsion find such fertile ground in his thoughts? A man who truly loved would have fought the magic, would have resisted. But Rydian spoke your worthlessness without hesitation, because some part of him believed it was true. The words struck like physical blows. But through the bond, Sorsha felt something else entirely. Rydian's fury, his denial, his desperate need for her to understand that nothing Carveth said was true. She closed her eyes, and she let go. The power that erupted from her was neither wolf nor shadow alone. It was both. It was the old blood, the ancient lineage that had existed before the 2 peoples divided. It was the birthright she had suppressed her entire life, finally unleashed. Darkness and light intertwined, exploding outward in a wave that threw Carveth and his assassins back like leaves in a hurricane. But it did not touch the wolves. Did not harm Ridian or Corvan or any of the loyal warriors who fought beside them. It knew, friend from foe, it knew exactly who deserved its wrath. Sorsha felt her body changing, bones shifting, muscles reforming. But this was not like the painful, terrifying shift that had nearly destroyed her in the Thornwood. This was natural. This was right. This was what she had always been meant to become. When the light faded, a wolf stood where Sorsha had been, but not an ordinary wolf. Her fur was neither white nor black, but both. Shadow and moonlight woven together in patterns that seemed to shift and flow like living darkness. Her eyes blazed with silver and gold combined, and the power that radiated from her form made even the most hardened assassins fall back in terror. She was something new, something that had not existed since the time before the divide. She was the bridge between two worlds. Sorsha, one voice whispered in her mind. Ridian's voice, awed and loving. My beautiful, impossible mate. She turned to face him, and even through wolf forms, even across a battlefield littered with bodies, she felt the bond between them surge with new strength. Then she turned to face the enemy. Carveth was scrambling backward, his face white with terror. What are you? What manner of creature? She did not give him time to finish. Her attack was swift and merciless. Not to kill, though every instinct screamed for his blood. No. Death was too easy for the man who had caused so much suffering. Instead, her jaws closed around his sword arm, shattering bone, removing any possibility that he would ever wield a weapon again. His scream echoed through the pass. The remaining assassins fled. Sorsha stood over Carveth's writhing form, shadows dancing around her like obedient serpents. Through the bond, she felt Ridian approaching, his massive black form pressing against her side. We have him. His voice rumbled in her mind. It is over. Sorsha wanted to agree, wanted to believe the nightmare was finally ending. But then pain lanced through her belly, sharp and sudden and undeniable. The babies, the transformation, the battle, the surge of power. It had been too much. She felt her wolf form dissolving, felt her human body reasserting itself even as agony ripped through her midsection. She collapsed to her knees, hands flying to her stomach. No, it was too early. They were not ready. She was not ready. Ridian. His name tore from her lips as a sob. The children. Something is wrong. They are coming now. The world narrowed to pain and pressure and the desperate need to bring her children safely into the light. Corvin had found a shepherd's cottage half a mile from the pass, its inhabitants long fled from the sounds of battle. Ridian carried Sorsha there himself, his arms trembling with exhaustion and terror as he laid her on the narrow bed. Breathe, he commanded, though his own breath came in ragged gasps. Focus on me, on my voice, on the bond between us. I cannot. Tears streamed down her face. It is too soon. They are too small. What if they are our children? Ridian pressed his forehead to hers. They carry your strength and my stubbornness. They have survived exile and battle and magic that should have destroyed them. They will survive this. Another contraction tore through her, and Sorsha screamed. Corvin appeared with water and clean cloths, his face grim but steady. The midwife from a nearby village is on her way. But my king, she may not arrive in time. Then we do this ourselves. Ridian moved to the foot of the bed, his hands gentle as he helped position her. Sorsha, I need you to push when the pain comes. Can you do that for me? She nodded weakly, her hand reaching for him. He caught it, pressed it to his lips, then returned to his position. The labor was brutal and swift, the children determined to enter the world on their own terms. The boy came first, sliding into Rydian's waiting hands with a cry that shook the rafters. He was small, but perfect, dark hair matted to his tiny head, lungs already proving their strength. A son, Rydian breathed, tears streaming down his face as he placed the squalling infant on Sorsha's chest. We have a son. She had barely a moment to register the warm weight of him before the next contraction hit. The girl followed her brother within minutes, smaller and quieter, her eyes opening immediately to reveal irises that shifted between silver and gold. When Corvin wrapped her in a clean cloth, shadows flickered briefly around her tiny fingers. She carries the old blood strongly, Corvin observed. Both of them do. Sorsha held her children, one in each arm, and felt something she had thought lost forever. Joy. Pure, overwhelming, impossible joy. They were alive. They were whole. Against every odd, every enemy, every twist of cruel fate, her babies had survived. Rydian climbed onto the bed beside her, his body curving protectively around his family. He stared at his children with wonder written across every feature. I never knew, he whispered. I never understood what this would feel like. They are so small, so perfect. They need names. Sorsha's voice was weak but warm. Rydian was silent for a moment, his finger tracing the curve of his daughter's cheek. Kalum, he finally said, for our son. It means heaven in the old tongue, because he is proof that the gods have not abandoned us. Sorsha smiled. And our daughter? You should choose. She looked at the tiny girl, at the shadows that still played around her fingers, at the eyes that held the power of two worlds. Nyx, Sorsha said softly, for the ancient goddess of night, because she was born from darkness and light combined. Kalum and Nyx, prince and princess of Valanthor. Heirs to a throne their father had nearly lost to win them. Rydian pressed a kiss to Sorsha's temple. The bond, he murmured. It needs to be completed. Not just for us, for them. For the kingdom we must reclaim. Sorsha understood. An incomplete bond left them vulnerable, left their children vulnerable. The magic that connected true mates was protection as much as passion. She turned her head, finding the spot where his neck met his shoulder, the same spot where he had claimed her so many months ago. Then let me claim you, she whispered. As you once claimed me. Rydian bared his throat in the ancient gesture of surrender. Sorsha's teeth sank into his flesh. The bond exploded between them. It was not pain. It was completion. Two souls that had been reaching for each other since the moment they met, finally becoming one. Sorsha felt Rydian's essence pour into her as hers flowed into him. She saw herself through his eyes, not a servant girl, not a nobody with delusions of grandeur. She saw a woman of extraordinary courage, who had faced exile and enemies with her head held high. She saw a mother who had protected her children against impossible odds. She saw a mate worthy of any crown, any throne, and any kingdom in existence. She saw herself as he had always seen her, and he saw himself through hers. Not a king who had failed her, not a man whose weakness had nearly destroyed everything. He saw a warrior who had torn apart a kingdom to find the woman he loved. He saw a father who would face armies and assassins and ancient magic to protect his family. He saw a mate whose devotion had never wavered, even when poison and lies tried to tear them apart. When the flood of shared memory and emotion finally receded, they were both weeping. I love you, Rydian said, his voice raw with feeling. I have loved you since the moment we met. I will love you until my last breath and beyond. And I love you. Sorsha touched the fresh mark on his throat, the scar that proclaimed their bond to all who saw it. I never stopped, even when I believed the worst, even when I ran. My heart knew the truth, even when my mind refused to listen. The babies stirred between them, small sounds of contentment as they felt the completed bond wash over them. A family. They were finally truly a family. But beyond the walls of this small cottage, a kingdom waited to be reclaimed. Traitors waited to face justice, and a throne waited for its rightful queen. Can you travel? Ridian asked quietly. Sorsha looked at her children, at the mate who had moved mountains to find her, at the future stretching out before them. For this, I can do anything. The great hall of Velenthor had never seen a morning like this. Lord Carveth knelt in chains before the assembled nobility, his ruined arm bound in blood-stained bandages, his face pale with terror. Beside him, Lady Melisande of House Varin trembled in her silken gown, all pretense of grace stripped away by the reality of her situation. 3 days had passed since Ridian and Sorsha crossed back into Velanthor at the head of a growing army. 3 days of loyal wolves rallying to their true king. 3 days of conspirators fleeing or surrendering as the tide turned irrevocably against them. Now the moment of reckoning had arrived. Sorsha stood beside Ridian on the raised dais, their children cradled in the arms of trusted attendants just behind the throne. She wore a gown of deep blue silk, the color of Velanthor's royal house, and the claiming mark on her hip had been joined by a crown of silver and sapphire. She was no longer a servant. She was queen. Lord Carveth, Ridian's voice rang through the hall, cold as winter steel. You stand accused of treason against the crown, of using forbidden magic to manipulate your king, of conspiring to murder the true queen and the heirs she carried, of installing a false regent and attempting to seize power for yourself. Carveth lifted his head, some remnant of defiance flickering in his eyes. Everything I did was for the good of Velanthor. You were blinded by passion for a common woman. Someone had to save the kingdom from your weakness. My weakness. Ridian descended the steps slowly, each footfall echoing through the silent hall. You speak of weakness while you plot in shadows, while you poison and manipulate rather than face your enemies openly, while you attempt to murder an innocent woman and her unborn children because they threatened your ambition. He stopped before Carveth, looking down at the man who had caused so much suffering. There is only one weakness in this hall, Ridian said quietly, and it kneels before me. He turned to face the assembled nobles. Lord Carveth is stripped of his lands, his titles, and his name. He will be executed at dawn, his body left for the crows as a warning to any who would threaten my mate or my heirs. A murmur rippled through the crowd, some approving, some fearful, all aware that the king they had known had been transformed by the trials of the past months. Ridian's gaze moved to Melisande. Lady Melisande of House Varin, you conspired with Carveth to take a throne that was never yours. You accepted a regency built on lies and attempted murder. What say you in your defense? Melisande's composure cracked. I knew nothing of the compulsion powder. Carveth told me you had rejected the servant girl of your own will. He said the bond between you was never true. I believed I was serving the kingdom by accepting the position he offered. And yet, you made no effort to confirm these claims. You asked no questions. You simply accepted power when it was handed to you. Ridian's voice hardened. Willful ignorance is not innocence. Please. Melisande's eyes darted to Sorsha. Your queen has reason to show mercy. She knows what it is to be manipulated by Carveth's schemes. Sorsha stepped forward, drawing the attention of every eye in the hall. You speak of mercy, she said quietly. Tell me, Lady Melisande, would you have shown me mercy? When Carveth sent assassins to kill me in Morveth, did you protest? When he planned to take my children from my body and raise them as weapons against their own father, did you object? Melisande's silence was answer enough. I will show you the mercy you would have shown me. Sorsha's voice carried no anger, only the calm certainty of a queen passing judgment. You are stripped of your titles and your lands. House Varin is dissolved, its holdings distributed among those who remained loyal. You will be exiled to the northern wastes, where you will live out your days contemplating the cost of ambition without conscience. The sentence was harsher than death in some ways. The northern wastes were frozen, barren, and endless. Those exiled there rarely survived more than a few years. Melisande was dragged away, her screams echoing through the hall until the great doors closed behind her. Ridian returned to the dais, taking his place beside Sorsha. He reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers before the assembled court. "Let this serve as a reminder," he announced. "The woman beside me is your queen, my true mate, the mother of my heirs. Any threat against her is a threat against the crown itself, and will be treated accordingly." He raised their joined hands. "Bow before Queen Sorsha of Valanthor." One by one, the nobles sank to their knees, lords and ladies, warriors and advisors, all bending before the servant girl who had become their queen. Sorsha looked out at the sea of bowed heads and felt the weight of her new position settle around her like a mantle. She had never wanted this, had never dreamed of crowns or thrones or ruling a kingdom. But she had wanted him. And everything else, the power, the responsibility, the enemies who would always seek to tear them down, was simply the price of loving a king. That night, with their children sleeping peacefully in the royal nursery and the castle finally quiet, Ridian led Sorsha to the balcony overlooking Valanthor. The kingdom spread before them, silver and shadow beneath a canopy of stars. Bonfires burned in celebration throughout the capital. Wolves howled their joy to the moon. And somewhere in the distance, the mountains she had crossed to flee from him stood as silent witnesses to how far they had come. "I thought I had lost you forever," Ridian murmured, his arms wrapping around her from behind. "When I woke and found you gone, when the bond screamed with your absence, and I could not find you no matter how far I searched, I believed the gods had decided I was unworthy of happiness." Sorsha leaned back against his chest, feeling his heartbeat steady and strong against her spine. "And now? Now I understand that we were being tested. Both of us. To see if our love could survive betrayal and exile and war." He pressed his lips to her hair. "We survived. We are stronger for it, and nothing will ever separate us again." She turned in his arms, her hands coming up to frame his face. "I never looked back, you know. When I fled across those mountains, when I disappeared into enemy territory, I never once turned around. I was so certain you had thrown me away that looking back felt like torture. And now," Sorsha smiled, the expression illuminating her face in the starlight. "Now I understand something I should have known from the beginning. I never needed to look back. Because you were always coming for me. You were always going to find me. The bond between us was never truly broken, even when I believed it was." She rose on her toes to press her lips to his. "I never looked back," she whispered against his mouth. "But if I had, I would have seen you chasing me all along." Ridian kissed her deeply, pouring every ounce of his love and devotion into the connection between them. When they finally parted, the first light of dawn was beginning to touch the horizon. A new day, a new beginning, a future that stretched before them, filled with challenges and joys and the beautiful, terrible, magnificent adventure of building a life together. They had found each other against impossible odds. They had survived betrayal and exile and war. They had created new life, brought it safely into the world, and claimed each other as true mates. And as the sun rose over Valanthor, painting the kingdom in shades of gold and rose, the Wolf King and his Shadow Queen stood together on their balcony. A family, a future, forever. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this story.